Thank you. Greetings, Tony Mobley here. And we're back for a new episode of Conversations with Tony Mobley. And my very special guest is Mr. Alex Lindsay. Happy to be here. So why are we here? We are here because life has provided me with an opportunity to have real conversations with real people. I need your help. I need your help because I need you to ask questions in the YouTube chat. I also need you to ask questions in the webinar through the Conversation with Tony Mobley Mukana chat in the Zoom webinar. And if you like the past conversations, I need you to like and subscribe. Set the bell to all notifications to be reminded of all the upcoming conversations. My very special guest is Mr. Alex Lindsay of 090 Media and the founder of Office Hours Global, the video production pioneer and video streaming educator.
Hi, Tony.
So I'm going to ask Alex to just give us a few words. And then after that, we're going to introduce the panel. And then we're going to go into the questions. Thank you all so much for being here.
And I don't know what I should say here other than, hi, everybody. It's good to see all of you. It's good to be here, Tony.
So I'm going to just jump in here and say, my name is Tláloc López-Watermann, and I am a lighting designer, and I've gotten into streaming a little bit here and there in this past year. And I'm happy to be here on this panel just to support Tony and Alex, and I'll pass it on to Chris.
Thank you. I'm Chris Clark. I'm old enough to be Alex's father. And in fact, I knew Alex when he was in his early teens and preteens. So my questions are going to be a lot about the 70s and, the 80s. Myself, I've been married for 55 years to the same woman who is smarter than I am. And I highly recommend that you guys go for that record. I spent 9.5 years as a submarine officer in the U.S. Navy, and then became an educational psychologist and taught at universities, mainly at Michigan State University, later at the University of Delaware, and now just finished up at Arizona State University, and that's where we live in Tempe, Arizona. So lovely to be here, and I'm looking forward to having Alex brag and sweat.
Todd.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Todd Reynolds. I'm up in the Berkshire Mountains of northwestern Massachusetts. It's a great pleasure to play sideman to Tony Mobley tonight. I'm going to read your questions that you submit in the YouTube chat and in Mukana. And I've been listening to Alex Lindsay since I think August 12th, 2006. And I now know him much better, having been a part of his Office Hours collective. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I call myself a solo classical violinist gone horribly wrong. I wound up somehow at the intersection of an 18th century violin and 21st century technology. So that's kind of what I do in my streaming and educational life. Brian?
Well, that was a nice throw. Brian Maddox, East Coast of the United States, originally from the DC metro area, now in beautiful Savannah, Georgia, where it will stay hot until at least December. This is a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your perspective. I kind of like it. I've been an audio professional for a while, which is how I got the gray hair. We can decide whether that's been 5 years or 30 years, depending on your perspective, but it started brown. That's all I can say. And I've been a bit of a foxhole friend of Alex Lindsay's for the last almost decade. And so we've shown courage under fire and managed to live to tell about it. So I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation this evening. And thank you very much, Tony, for inviting me on here. I don't know if I'm supposed to throw to someone else or I throw it back to Tony. I'll throw it to Tony. He looks like he's in charge.
Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. My name is Emily Russo. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I have a new job as a learning experience designer working for a company in the Pacific Northwest. And before that, I was a technology coach and a classroom teacher. And I found Office Hours July 17th of this past, or the year before, because Alex was looking for actual teachers to weigh in on some of the stuff that Office Hours people could help with. And so I jumped on and I haven't left. So I look forward to continuing to be here going forward and learning from everybody in the group.
Grant.
Good day, everyone. My name's Grant Whitehead from Adelaide, South Australia. Good morning, as it is. I am someone who's worked in production for a lot of years, kind of learnt how to do sound sitting on my dad's knee at church. I couldn't see the sound desk, so sitting on dad's knee, I learnt what all those things did. And then it didn't take me too long to kind of take over from dad. Oh, you actually do it this way, Dad. This is how you do it. And then I've moved on lots of production things, but then I've done some young adult work or some youth work. And I stepped away from technology, did some youth work, and inevitably that led me back to technology. And in 2009, I did what was a virtual event. I was doing a weekly podcast live stream with people, with panelists way back then, and really haven't stopped live streaming since. But my biggest claim to fame really is that I was the first to register for Office Hours when Alex sent it out. And it was the only reason, I haven't told anyone this trick, but it was that I had alerts set on Alex with Twitter, and so it popped up on my phone as a notification, and so I jumped straight onto the registration, got in first, and I'm so glad that I can always say that I'm the OG of Office Hours.
Guy.
Yeah, my name is Guy Cochran. Up here in Everett, Washington, and that's interesting to know, Emily, that your employer's up here, and it's sunny right now, but usually it's raining. I started out in the graphics field, so by tradition I'm more of a print guy, but I got handed a copy of After Effects in 1998, and the Avid editor that had a $250,000 system said, learn this. And I'm so glad he did, because from there the DV revolution took off. I wound up starting a store 17 years ago, and now we're one of the biggest Blackmagic dealers, the biggest on the West Coast as far as I know. So we sell a lot of camera equipment, audio, lighting, and a lot of people here on the panel have gotten a shipment from the store to help them create better video. And that's our motto, is we help people create better video. So thank you for having me.
Thank you all so much for being here. And so we're going to start with my first question for Alex. Can you talk about your love for cooking?
Yeah, I do love cooking. So when I was younger, I was the oldest of six, and my mom, she made something. She didn't. We ate together for a little while, but then as we got older, we all became kind of chaotic, and we all had our own opinions about what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, or what we wanted to eat. And my mom was like, "Here's the deal. I'm going to make food, and I'm going to put it on the stove, and you can eat what I made, or you can make your own." There was never like, what do you want? She's like, I'm making this and you can eat it if you want, And so I started, when I really got into cooking was that I was bodybuilding at the time, and I was I was like, my mom was feeding me too much fat, too much carbs, too much whatever. And so I took over, and I was eating liver like 3 times a week and very, very specific things because I was trying to cut weight and everything else. And so I started getting into it. And then I also, had the luxury of living in a farm where we had a big pond in the back. And so I would go out and fish. I'd finish work or I'd finish school and I'd go out and fish, catch a couple crappies or a couple bluegills and sometimes a bass, come in, fillet it, cook it, and eat it. And it was just a kind of a great experience of being able to do that. After that, I got into macrobiotic. I actually went completely the other direction, became macrobiotic for like 3 years. And if you're macrobiotic, you cook everything because it's not available anywhere. And so I got into, a lot of cooking because it was the only way I could supply my my diet. And anyway, so I got into it then, and I really found it interesting. And then I will admit it kind of went away. It was one of those things that I, just ate whatever would come by. And I would try to cook, but I didn't really get very serious about it until recently again. And I got kind of, I think I was having lots of digestive issues. And so I started just taking over my diet, I tend to, when things are going wrong, I tend to just take over what I'm doing. And I got really obsessed with the idea of single ingredient cooking. And so I started just going, I'm not going to buy anything that not anything, but I'm going to try to keep on reducing anything that has more than one ingredient. So if the bag says more than rice or more than, whatever it is, I'm not going to buy it. I'm just going to figure out how to cook all of this. And so I started getting into that, and that led to bread. And I was really interested in bread because, it's the core of civilization. Us learning how to make bread changed how much time we had, changed everything about what we did. And so I thought it's a very basic skill that I don't know. Like I don't understand how to make bread. And so I got some books on it. I got this one called Water, Flour, Salt, Yeast or something like that. And I can never remember the order. And it was a great book. It was very technical, which helped. And so I was like, okay, this is an interesting technological process. If I want to build training, like this is the ultimate thing that you need to know how to do is make bread. It's the most core thing. So then I made over 3 months, I made 300 loaves of bread. so I just, that's kind of how I approach things. I just iterate and figured out and really got into just, now I also gained 20 pounds, which I still work at as you get older. Cutting it back off is harder. And, but I learned a lot about it and really fell in love with it. So that was, and then I've been cooking, but really stumbling forward. And I think that what's interesting now is that what I've gotten really excited about within office hours is this idea that we're all going to cook together. So it was an interesting, it was not something that we started working with Madeline Smithberg and we started thinking about cooking, and we had Damayanti Gajar come on as a test. I go, Hosmuk knows somebody. Let's let the Hosmuks in our group. Let's have her come on and do one so we can just kind of figure this out before we get into it. And what was funny was that I actually really enjoyed it. Just was like, this is the way to learn, is to be with somebody who knows how to do it and hanging out with other people and cooking and figuring it out. And it's taken what I was already kind of interested in and scaled it up a lot because it's just something that now I feel like it's an exploration. So anyway, I like cooking a lot. It's a very basic skill. And I think that, again, I think a lot of people have lost that skill, and I think that now I find myself as I learn more from all the things that we've been doing around cooking, start using maybe not the whole ingredient list or I don't make the same meal, but I'm like, oh, I really like that. And I really like this part. And I really like this part. And I start pulling it all together, and I make my own breakfast every morning. We get up and I hang out with everyone. I go out and I make a breakfast in about 15 or 20 minutes. And it's this great breakfast every single morning. And I'm just like, it's very fulfilling, that I made it from scratch. It's exactly what I like to eat. and I'm able to kind of put, I guess I feel like for many years, I was not capable of doing that very well. Like I can make one meal And now I, make a lot of different things. And so so I enjoy it. And I think it's a basic part of being a human being is to be able to make food. And a lot of times we've given it to somebody, given somebody else that opportunity. So anyway, so it's from an intellectual perspective as well as it's just that I like to eat good food. And I like control. so all those things meet together with me cooking my own food.
I want to say that you've gotten really good at it, and you spurred my desire to be more creative in terms of what I do in the kitchen, because I've been married for 31 years and I have always done all the cooking in our home. And so it's my job. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Chris, you had your hand up. Do you want to say something, Chris?
No, I was just gesturing, non-verbal participation.
Okay, so my next question is, how did you get to be such a great teacher? Was it when you started at the college level, or was it in Africa, or was it when you were working with young people?
Well, I think that, so I it's all mixed up together. I think that I always was interested in being able to explain things to people, so how do you condense this down into something that someone's going to understand? I think as the oldest of six, you're explaining things to your younger siblings all the time of like, this is how, and when you don't explain it well, it means you have to do it. So you get really good at explaining how to do it because you don't want to do it anymore. And so, so learning how to educate was kind of self-preservation of my time. But then as I got older, one of the things I found was a great way into an industry was to be able to write an article or be able to speak. And I was already passionate about it. But so I really got started, the way I got started anyway, was I would speak at events about graphics. So there was like these little, user group meetings. There was a user group meeting. I was in Denver, Colorado. And I was learning how to use Quark Express and Photoshop and Illustrator. And so it was more of a Quark and pre-press thing. And so I had started to learn how to do all of this stuff and just went and literally back then you go to the Tattered Cover in Denver, which was this huge bookstore, and they had a whole section on Photoshop, and you'd buy a couple more books, and I'd spent almost most of my money on buying books. And I worked at a company called Prime, or an organization called Prime Sports Network, a TV network. And I was just the intern, and I just had access to the computer. So I just had to just bash my way through figuring out how to learn this thing called Quark. I was just told they use Quark, they use Illustrator, they use Photoshop. I had not heard of any of these programs before. And I was just like, okay. So I just started buying books and spending all my time just trying to figure it out. As I figured it out, I started saying, well, I can show something at the user group, I can help. And so I would do little demos of how to do different things. And I found that suddenly I knew all these people, and I found it was much easier. I'm not really an extrovert. I'm not very good at introducing myself in a group. So if you put me in a large room, I will just stand there, and if no one walks up, I'll leave. I've been that way since I was a kid. Like I just stand in the corner. I stand near the door so that I can escape quickly if no one comes up to me. And but I'm super uncomfortable with breaking the ice, and I just don't do it. And so I found that a coping mechanism or a winning formula to do this was to speak. Because if you speak, I know this will sound crazy for an introvert to speak in front of people, but what I found was it got rid of all of me having to introduce myself. So I really got good at speaking in front of lots of people, because then it meant that I didn't have to do any work to meet people. And so I got used to, I was speaking almost every week, almost every month at this user group. And then I found, I could write articles, and I started writing articles for a 3D artist magazine, and then started writing for 3D Design magazine. And I started writing all these things. And I love the idea of taking something complex, and trying to, digest it, for somebody else, so that they don't have to go through what I went through to figure that out. I think when I really turned the corner, I wrote an article about NURBS of all things, and NURBS and B-splines. And it was this book, it was for 3D Design magazine. And I was supposed to write a 1,500 word article, and I wrote it 6,000 words. And it took me 3 months to write it, like, as I was researching it and I was putting it all, and I was like working on it. And I used to have to take a bus to Boulder. That's where I was working. I was living in Denver at the time. And so the whole bus ride, I had this little Mac laptop, and I kept on just doing research and trying to figure it out. Anyway, so I wrote it, and they were, they weren't expecting 6,000 words, and they were happy with it. They said, we can't pay you anymore. I was like, oh, it's fine. I just wanted to do I knew that was the finished product, right? And so then to do more, they let me go ahead and model something for the cover. And so I did the cover as well. So I think that was mostly an excuse to pay me more. Like, somebody's got to do the cover for the magazine. And so so I did that. The funny thing about it was that was so I just did it because I enjoyed it, but it was the turning point of probably my career, which was that I was asked to go teach someone how to use Form Z in this law firm. And I was talking about NURBS, and the guy said, I read this incredible article about NURBS. And I said, yeah, I wrote that. I wrote that article. And my hourly went from $15 an hour to over 100, really fast. And so it was, because they were just like, okay, we'll hire you and have you do this stuff. And they started working me. And so anyway, it was a real lesson there. I got a job soon after that at Lucasfilm. And that was even driven from my interest in doing this, because I didn't know how to use this program called Electric Image. And so I figured, well, the people who know how to do this are on this one AOL forum, and they're all the guys that work at HBO and they work at ABC, and they're doing all these graphics. And if I just figure out the problems they have, if I can fix the problems they have, I'll learn how to use Electric Image. And so I would just sit there every night and I would read their questions. Like, I can't figure out how to do this, right? Or I can't figure out how to do that. And then I'd spend the whole night working on it. But then I would very nonchalantly go, hey, you might want to try this. And I would just describe it in like 4 paragraphs. And what happened is it kind of built up this thing. And so then that's how the person at Lucasfilm was watching that forum, David Dezoritz. And so it was part of how I ended up getting a job there. So what I learned very quickly is contributing back to that community. At every moment, I was getting jobs, I was getting other things, and I didn't know I didn't know where that would come from or what it would look like. But I really found that was a great avenue to meet a lot of people. Once I got to, I missed it though. Once I got to Lucasfilm, I got to Lucasfilm, and then I ended up at Industrial Light and Magic. And while I was there, I just missed teaching. Like, I was like, this is really fun. And so I ran into. I don't even remember how we met, but Chris Marler was a director and at the San Francisco State University's multimedia studies program, and so I got pulled into that, and then I started making up. And I thought that I was going to teach everybody how this works. It's like these teachers so slow. Let me show you. Like, I work on Star Wars. Let me show you how to teach. And I just got ground into the ground. Like, it was like run through the pipe of what it takes to teach. And so I was both. I was very confronted by it. And usually, if I get hit in the nose like that, I get really obsessed with things. Like, if I don't do well, I dig in. And so I dug in and really got into it. And to go further though, so then we started, we can talk at some point about Pixel Core, but we started doing this. And one of the things that I learned was, as I taught this, I got really much better. I was asked to teach at a school over the summer, a little summer camp. And I learned, wow, I am so much better if I just teach this. And I didn't go, oh, these are kids. They were like 10 to 14 years old, or 8 to 12, or somewhere in that range. I didn't treat them like kids. I was like, okay, here's how photogrammetry works. Here's how HDR works. Here's how to model 3D. Because I found that they would learn it just as, to be honest, faster than the adults. And they weren't scared of it. And you could tell them to do really, really complex things, and they would just figure it out, but I had to be super concrete. I couldn't use any big words. I couldn't use complex explanations. I had to be super concrete about how to do it. And I loved the training that they gave me to be clear in my communication about how something works, and figure out how to better, be able to pull that together. And then that all culminated in opening a school in Rwanda in partnership with the Rwandan government. And then we had all these great students. They were just so inspiring to work with. And that was 10 years ago. And then I've still kind of go back and forth. I think that, from my training perspective, we fell into production, which is a whole nother thing, but when COVID hit and I had time and I was suddenly not traveling, I was like, I really miss a lot of people learning together. And so off we went.
So you've already knocked out about 3 of the questions that I had. So thank you, Alex. So I'm gonna ask Todd to get ready to start with the Mukana questions, and we're gonna go with the first Mukana question right now.
Thank you, Tony. So we've got a ton of great questions tonight spanning education and technology, but I thought I'd just start with Manolo Lozano's question from Swansea in the UK, asking, Alex, what inspired you to create Office Hours?
Yeah, so part of it was that the Pixel Corps had kind of wound down, we in a lot of different ways, but the membership, Pixel Corps had started as a membership. It wasn't a production company, it was a membership. And the idea was we would train people all over the world, and we'd build this huge workforce around the world that'd be able to handle what I saw coming, which was video is going to be the future, and it's going to take, and of course I was like 20 years early, the technology wasn't there, and we were kind of pushing up against it and trying to do classes online. We learned to do live streaming because we were doing it online. And we were trying to figure out how do I teach a class for 2,000 people in 40 countries? And it was, there's a lot of people that enjoyed it, but it was, from my perspective, I was like, the technology's not here yet. So, we slowly moved into production, and then did a ton of work, thousands of events for Google and Facebook and, a lot of other Bay Area companies, and learned a lot. And then I bet big on virtual events, 2018, and by 2019 I'd bet the farm and lost the farm on that. And so I had spent like basically a year of being kind of a Ronin, of just wandering around doing consulting for companies and everything else. And I finally had just gotten a new job, told them virtual events is going to be the future. My boss, who's my current boss, he's like, you're going to have to write a business plan. I don't really understand where that's going to come. This is before COVID. Then COVID hit and everything got really busy. And what I felt was that, I had been given the opportunity to work on a lot of virtual events, hybrid events and virtual events. And, working with Google and Facebook, it was, we want to connect the space station. We want to connect to a war zone. We want to connect to underwater. We want to connect to a head of state, lots of heads of state. We want to connect classrooms to this and that. And so I had learned all these things, and I was like, there's probably not that many people that have, and the mistake that I made the first time with Pixel Corps was that I started learning all this stuff, and basically, Google had us doing stuff all over the world and just doing really complex events, and we wouldn't tell anybody about any of it. We were just like, because I went from 6 people to 30 people, which terrified me, because every making payroll, for anybody who's started a business, making payroll is a big obsession, becomes a big obsession of yours. I had to make $500,000 a month. You had to come in, or we were going to close up, which we did eventually because it stopped coming in. But the interesting thing is that because of that, I wouldn't tell anybody the secrets. We had figured out how to turn Google Hangouts into something that nobody else was doing. And because, we were getting tons of money to do it, and we were just throwing gear and people and everything else at it, in a way that no one else had the money to do. And so we were learning all these things, but we wouldn't tell anybody anything. And what I learned after it kind of petered out was, if the industry doesn't exist, there's nothing to, I had a huge piece of a tiny little pie, and I'd be much better off with a tiny little drop of a giant pie, I regretted that for years, I really could have done this a different way. So I got to think about that for 5 years before COVID. And so when COVID hit, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do the same thing again. Let's just get in there and just tell everybody how to do all this. And I thought that I would get up and I'm just going to get up and show everybody how to do all this stuff. And then what was amazing was all these incredible people showed up that knew more about what they were showing up to do than I did. There was and I didn't expect that. I have to admit, I put out a Twitter, and I literally thought I was just going to be me teaching a class, and organizing people and showing them how to do it and being, whatever. And what I was amazed by was just that I had suddenly all these really smart people who, knew, and I was good at being the glue between them, but they were incredibly talented and knew their verticals much better than I did. And so it was just, I didn't expect that. And it's why I can still get up every morning and jump into a conversation, with office hours after 500 and some days in a row, almost for me, for us, unbroken, but for me, almost unbroken. And I found that I get, I get withdrawal. Like when I go into production, I miss it for 3 or 4 days. I'm like, start getting cranky. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I got to get back to office hours. And so it's fun because I really feel like I, learn something every single day, and I'm constantly absorbing, from everyone around me. And so, and I learn from conversation. So it's, I will admit it's built around my propensity is that if you make me read something, I'll never learn it. But if you let me sit there in a conversation with people, I learn pretty fast.
Alex, I want to tell you that when you lose your internet, you begin to experience withdrawal as well. And so I can tell you as a matter of fact, when you lose your internet, you go through withdrawals from not being able to participate in office hours.
I have so many ways to get connected to the internet because I know what you're saying. I know that what you're saying is the truth, and I just don't let that ever happen.
Well, it was an act of God. And so
yeah, exactly.
The lightning strike, and then
incredible.
it also took out the cell towers. So I was really in bad shape.
That's rough.
Todd, next question, please.
Well, Chris Clark from Tempe, Arizona had asked the question. It was voted up significantly. Tell us the abridged story of Pixel Core. What life changes happened for you and the core members? Some expected and some surprising. You've sort of been down this road a little bit already, Alex, but I don't know if you have anything more to say to that before we move on.
I mean, so what happened there is I was at Pixel Core. The seed of Pixel Core was when I was still at ILM, and I was, and I was dealing with I was teaching at San Francisco State University and working at ILM. So a couple nights a week I was down there, and I just really felt like the classroom experience wasn't efficient. Like I was just like, this is killing me. Like it's not like people are learning, they're having a good time. It wasn't that. It was just like, this is going so slowly. I could teach faster. I think I could teach faster, And so we took some of the students out of one of our classes, and they started meeting us at a pizza place that has since burned down in San Rafael. And we just gave them, here's the deal. I'm going to give you a challenge. Go make that. And so we would challenge these 3 guys to go work on this stuff. And by the end, everyone really enjoyed the class and they did really well. Those 3 people that we pulled out were working, like they're in the industry after that. They had, turned the corner. One ended up at Weta, one ended up at I think Anarch in Boulder, and the other one does effects down in LA still, I think. And anyway, so that was a really successful test. And then we were like, okay, let's keep doing it. let's figure this out. And so when I left, ILM, I, started doing some training online, trying to figure out how we were going to, figure out how we're going to collect people all over the world. And I found my old business plan that had been bouncing around when I was getting rid of some stuff in my garage. And it was the same as we're doing now. It's like, we're going to stop doing hunting and gathering. We're going to start farming talent. Like it was like we're going to stop. I was like, the hunting and gathering, when we switched from hunting and gathering to farming is when we became a civilization, and it just outlined, it's the same thing just 20 years later. Anyway, so we started doing it, and we were in this little place down in the south of San Francisco, and every day someone would come by, and I had a little website, and I would show like this thing called attention to detail, and people started putting their emails in to get in, and we had a couple thousand people, and then I sent out an email. People started showing up, and like 5 people a week would show up, and I'd go, okay, so we're going to use media. We're going to take over the world. Like it was, but I just said that over 45 minutes. Like it was just like, this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to do this stuff. And they were like, okay, I'm in. And then that turned into these, what we call graphics nights. And we got to a point where there were 200 people. We had to find bigger places to do this. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to start charging people because I need a bigger office. And so people were giving us $50 a month to keep doing this crazy thing that we were doing. And we'd go out and shoot a whole bunch of videos and come back. And it was just this great, experience. And so then I figured, well, let's see what happens if we do this online. and we did it online, and 1,000 people showed up, signed up. And so the next thing we knew, we were suddenly we had a tiger by the tail, which is not the best place to have that. And so and it was just running down the path, and all these people are excited, and we started building up teams. I started organizing people, like, okay, you do this, and started organizing people around teams. And the Pixel Core logo, the old Pixel Core logo, is actually the team structure that I had designed, just pulled back and blurred a little bit, and it turns into those but it was basically, the idea was nobody had more than 3 people reporting to them. And so that you'd have a team leader, and senior artisans, and then junior artisans, and then apprentices, and the team leaders would go up to a director, and and so I started spreading all of the management out. And at one point we had over, a couple hundred people in these team structures, and then a whole lot of other people that were just enjoying watching the teams go. And we would build these huge challenges for people all over the world. So we'd say, okay, we had talked about the fact that I thought you could teach anybody 3D with just a series of cubes, but it can be an ice cube or a leather cube or a fleshy cube or a mechanical cube. And you just had to figure out all the surfaces and everything else. So I would tell everybody a story. We'd do a little paragraph. And then from the story, they had to make something up. I wouldn't give them no pictures, no anything. You just had to make it up from your mind's eye. And it was just amazing, to watch all these people put it together. Anyway, so everyone was learning really from each other at that point. It was very peer-to-peer. And we ended up with a lot of folks that, ended up, Nick Justin ended up at Digital Domain, and other people ended up at Weta, and other people ended up in broadcast and doing other things. And it was an amazing group of people. And still, every once in a while we had these profile pictures that were black and white with a white background with a little drop shadow. And every once in a while I see one show up in somebody's like profile picture, or literally on their badge. And it's like their little badge of honor that they were part of that group. So anyway, that's a very abridged version, as abridged as I can give of what that was when it started, at least before it became production.
Thank you, Alex, thank you for the answer, and Chris, thank you.
I hope I'm not giving too long of an answer, so I'm just kind of like what comes.
All right, Todd, next question.
Right on. We're getting into the details here. David Brady from Office Hours asks, technical skills can be taught and mentored. What are the top 3 soft skills that are important to our collective field, which can only be learned through exposure and experience, and how can we nurture that in future generations?
I think that I would say, so I guess I would say, first of all, is be useful. Like that is like it's the secret to the whole operation. Is to serve, and to be useful and know how it's going to affect other people, how it serves other people. People have they think a lot about, what they want and what they want to get out of life, and and their version of success. And they try to figure out how they can feed that. If you spend more time thinking about how it's going to serve other people and make sure that it's actually doing that, a lot of life sorts itself out. Like it kind of like when you're serving other people in that area, in whatever area you're serving in, I look for those opportunities, all the time. And I love ones that are, easy. I like sitting through, there's one Buddhist teacher, in Green Gulch, which is a Buddhist, Zen Buddhist, and I just go when he speaks. I don't go all the time. I don't, his name's Reb Anderson. And so when Reb speaks, I go there. But the thing that I do is, at the end, they have all these chairs that fill the room, and they got to clear them out because they only have a lot of people there one day. I always sit in the back so that I can get to the room that it has to go in, and I help do all the chairs. It's like because they ask for a couple of volunteers, and I help do all the chairs. And what's funny is it's just a very pure service, of just helping to make sure the chairs all get sorted out well, and I get to connect with every person that comes by because they all thank you, they all thank, they thank you, they're connected to you for that moment. And then you get to, and you get this very raw, benefit from it, but I'm always looking at how something is going to serve the world, and serve other people. I think that the other thing is being reliable. and I haven't always been reliable in my life, so I've been mostly crazy. But I've learned that over time to learn to be reliable, and, a lot of it, like, I think that one of the things about office hours is that, we start, we're very reliable. We start within 5 minutes of the top of the hour, and usually within a minute, of that top of the hour. We work very hard to be consistent, and be reliable. People have to feel like they can put their hand on top of whatever you're building and they can lean on it, and it's going to stay there, and sometimes there can be chaos underneath that, but the goal is to give them something that they feel like they can, do, there. So I think being useful, and being reliable. And then I think that the final thing is just being humble. We're all very fortunate to be here, and if we're on Zoom having this conversation, or on a computer watching this conversation, we're incredibly fortunate. Like, whatever is going on, I work in a lot of parts of the world where people aren't as fortunate, and so I think that just being humble to know that it's, it's, by grace that you are where you are, and so I think that those are the three things that I think. I mean, there's lots of little things that make all of that stuff work a little bit better, like being on time and being other things like that. But those are the three big things, I think, that I would say that are the core things that I find that almost everybody that I work around have those three things. So,
Alice, if I could just add a little bit to that, can you talk about when you're working in a production environment, what are the soft skills that you use when you're actually dealing with the talent?
Or the talent or the client or the,
Yes.
For the hard soft skills, those are the soft. I just gave you the softest soft skills. The harder ones, I think, one thing is that I tend to be very direct, and I tend not to, but I try not to say more words than I have to, with what's going on. I try to do everything I can. I don't always succeed, but I try to do everything I can not to give people excuses. I just go, this is what, if I'm late or something's not working, I tell them it's not working, but I don't sit there and try to explain to them. It doesn't matter to them. They don't need to know that. They don't need to know why. That's because one of the things that we're caught up in life is that a lot of people think that, not getting something done plus an excuse equals getting something done. And if you just take the excuse out, not getting something done is not getting something done. Doesn't mean it's bad or good or whatever, but you just have to take that little bit out of the equation. So, but it makes a big difference on site, because people get angry, and then you give them an excuse that doesn't add up to them. And then they're more angry than they were before, and so you just need to tell them and accept where you're at, and then move forward. I think that, being not arrogant, but confident is important. So one of the things is just, hey, this is what we have to do. This is what we're, like you're gonna be confident about, this is where we're gonna go, and you can be confident while you're changing direction. And now we'll go this way, but being confident gives people a sense of that things are going in some direction that needs to be there, and so it's not saying too much, and then it's just, I guess it keeps on coming back to reliability is so important. And so I think that those are the things that I look for. There's lots of little things that are like being on time. And when I say on time, I don't mean being really early either, because it means something else I have to do with that person if they show up really early. So being on time, being precise, most people that work with me know that I very much value people who are precise for precise sake. like we just keep playing, we keep playing bigger, tighter and tighter games for no apparent reason other than it entertains us, and almost everybody that I work with is like that, and so, but I think that, and again, nugging through things, I think a soft skill is just saying, you got to do what needs to get done to get that job done, and there's not a lot of complaints or other process. And again, the people that I tend to work with tend to just solve the problem, and do whatever they need to do to get it done. And so I think that those are some of the soft skills. I don't know how many I just listed off. Yeah, go ahead, Grant. I'm sorry. I'm used to saying.
You're in old habits.
Sorry, Tony. I took over.
It's not your show, Alex. I'm not taking direction from you.
Go ahead, Grant.
What you're saying there, I think makes me think of in my work. I do lots of medical shows, and we deal with doctors all the time. And the interesting thing is, in recent days, I've realized that what we do in events, we're kind of like doctors, in that it's highly technical, and then we have to have this bedside manner, and we're dealing with people often in their stress place. Often people that work in events probably shouldn't work in events, in that they're super stressed out. And so then we're doing this bedside manner. We've come out of the ICU and we're stepping in and we're needing to say, well, this is what's happening. Can you see that parallel and working with the technical aspect of what we do?
Yeah, I mean, I if I get really stressed, I'll suddenly get really flat, like not nice, not whatever, just flat. And anybody around me knows that I'm now stressed, but I literally can't feel anything. And I just go completely numb, and then I just operate, like I just do what needs to get done to get it fixed, but I will say that it probably is a unique skill, not a unique skill. I mean, there's other people like me, but that it's a rarer skill that I handle stress inside of an event well, because I immediately, my fight or flight is to go numb, and then I just start operating. And so, and I think that the people around me don't necessarily have the same response, but I find that almost all of them have the same kind of effect, which is that they tend to calm down when things are crazy. And so I look for that in my teams, just, and if someone freaks out, and we've had people literally in some of our shows just literally stand up and walk away. Like they just couldn't handle the stress that was going on. It was like, I can't deal with this. And, the folks that I've stuck with for a decade, like Brian and like many others, are the folks that something's going wrong and we're all just sitting there just talking and figuring it out, and no one's yelling at each other. No one's figuring it, like we're just constantly looking at what the solution is, and how do we fix that?
Okay. So now, Chris, I'm going to have to cut you off for a quick second. I just want to make an announcement. We are running out of time. And so we're going to have to up the ante because we have several questions that have piled up. So we're going to try to Chris, I'm going to let you come in for a quick second. And then Todd, we're going to go with the questions, and we're going to try to get, I'm going to do an Alex on Alex in terms of short responses.
Okay.
My brief comment was that the calm reflex under stress is a great quality for submarine crew members too. So you would have made a great crewmate with me, Alex.
Excellent.
Okay, Todd.
So luckily these are all existential, Alex. So this is your life. Here we go. Anybody who's followed you knows something about your work in Rwanda, your extraordinary work. And the question is from Tláloc López-Watermann in Astoria, New York, here on our panel. He asks, what was the most unexpected thing that you learned about yourself in Rwanda?
Most unexpected thing. I think that most of my theories around what to do in Africa were wrong. So I had a whole lot of ways that I thought things would work, and they just didn't work that way. So I learned that in Zimbabwe as well as Rwanda.
Can you tell us one favorite moment from your career so far?
So far, trying to think of I guess I find it to be a funny one. It was so really fast, but I might have told it before, but it's. I always think when Grant's here, I always think about how often I tell stories, the same story. Anyway, so
I love this one.
Yeah, exactly. the fun. I think one of the fun ones is that we were setting up. To cut it short, we were setting up and having some trouble back and forth. And this was in the synod at the Vatican, and the Pope was going to be there the next day, and we were going to, we're supposed to set up, we're having trouble, we're getting into an argument. And I said, look, we just have to get this done or we're not going to have a live show. And so people were upset. They're going to have a smoke. They said they had to go take a smoke break. And so they took a break, but one of them said, I'm going to go talk to Papa Francisco. So I was like, oh, I've really screwed this up. Like I'm going to get into a lot of trouble and to figure out like whether we should keep moving forward or whatever. And they came back and we all came back and I was just ready to be fired. And they said, I've talked to Papa Francisco. He says, we're moving forward with the event. And then he looked at me quizzically and he says, you're in charge. So from then on, there's been a joke. I think, Brian, were you there at that? Were you there for that? Yeah, Brian was there. That was,
yes, I was.
Yeah. So from then on, the joke in the company was always like, the Pope put me in charge, and I asked them, I said, how long does that last? And he's like, as soon as you leave, it's gone. And that was it was a fun experience, but we've had a lot of fun ones.
Very cool. Next question.
Okay. From our own David Brady in New York. If you could go back and do over one thing in life without the fear of altering the future, what would it be and why?
One thing. I don't know. The hard part that I always have with that is I don't know if I want to revise anything, because if I took that one thing that I wanted to change, it would be something that I know would change everything. Like it was, that it would, like this is because there are definitely linchpins in my life that I can say, if I hadn't pulled, if I had pulled this out or I didn't do this, it would have changed everything. But I think that I'm pretty content with where I'm at. And so I don't think I would change anything.
Cool. Next question.
Okay. We've gotten through the existential ones kind of. So next, here's a practical one from Frank Hilgers in Naperville, Illinois. Which path would you recommend to get up to speed quickly in video audio production for someone adept in digital analog circuitry, networking, and programming experience?
Get involved with other people and start working on the projects. The best thing to do is to get into it. So when there's an opportunity to, like a bunch of people here are doing this show, they've all gotten together, figure out where you can take what you already know and you make it useful for that production, but figure out how you can contribute to it and just start moving. It's just, there's nothing better than nothing that teaches you faster than being on a project, especially live projects. The number one learning, you can take drugs, number one learning drug, adrenaline. Adrenaline is the number one. You learn faster with that than anything else that you could possibly find.
Very cool. Next question.
Moving on with education from Chris Clark in Tempe, Arizona on the panel. Alex, you often say that the education hours of office hours are favorites of yours. Please tell us why education is so interesting and important to you.
I think it's really important because I grew up just loving to learn. Like I literally read the entire encyclopedia, book of knowledge or whatever the book of, the encyclopedia of knowledge or whatever that collection was. I literally used to sit and read the whole thing. Like I read the whole thing, and there's a lot of pictures. So unfortunately, it wasn't that much reading. Anyway, but I read the whole thing, and I loved learning. I always was trying to figure something out, always trying to learn, and I hated school, like just with a passion. And I felt that incongruity was just really odd. That I would love to learn and hate to go to school, and I think that a lot of my life has been trying to solve that equation. Is just like, if you love to learn, it should be something that you enjoy doing, and it should be something that's effective, and so I think that that's why I think that it's the most important thing. It's how we move forward. And so teachers are the key to the operation. And I think that we just don't support them very well, and so I'm always excited about trying to figure out how do we build an environment that they can be more successful.
And all the teachers that are out there watching this, please come to office hours on Saturdays for the education hour.
So much fun.
It is really fun. You learn a lot, and it's not shared on YouTube. So you can feel free to talk about the things that you need to talk about. Next question.
So this sets it up really well for Guy Cochran's question. If you were given full control of the education system, what would the future of learning look like?
That's a big one. Let's see if I can do that. So, I mean, the big thing is the first thing that I would do is get rid of grades, both A through F and then K through 12, and really put people in a path where it's a point structure where they're just trying to get, let's say there's 2,000 points for history and 2,000 points for math and 2,000 points. These are the things they just have to get through, and then they just level up essentially. And then I would use the fact that we can do this all online so that you line up the right experts for the right students where they are in their current thing. So you stop worrying about whether they're 7 years old or 9 years old or 12 years old. They're all in this one little slice of, they understand this, they're ready to learn Pythagorean theorem, or they're ready to learn this. And you line them all up based on that, not based on not limited by geography, not limited by age, not limited, but just where they're all in the same place ready for that thing. And then you have experts that are really able to support them in that one area. And those experts, they pass through. They just, it's like a zone, that's the zone that they're in. And so and all of that would be impossible in the current structure. You would need big data. You would need to be able to do it over Zoom. You would need to be able to do, like all of these things are all coming and are appearing right now. And so, so maybe someday we're not that far away now of being able to do it. Whether we get to do it or not, I don't know, but I think we're close to having the technology in a place that it would be possible.
Thank you for the answer, Alex, and Guy, thank you for the question. Next question.
I think this will be interesting for all of us who know you. Ken Jones in Seattle asks, Alex, what do you tell your children that you do for a living?
I don't know. I don't even explain it to them. Like Dad does his thing that he does, and they watch me go through all these different things that I've done and everything else. I guess, when someone asks, I just say I manage complex events for the web, or complex events for the internet. And I think that they kind of get that. I don't know if they even ask that much, but yeah, I think they know that I do video stuff and I have done a bunch of random things around the world. They like that I don't travel as much. So.
Very cool. Next question.
So Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina asks, looking at the trajectory of our industry, what are you most excited about in the next 5 or 10 years?
I'm excited about education, actually, at all levels. I think that we're about to see this huge explosion, so everything from K through 12 to university to professional training. The tools are getting so good at what we're doing, of being able to open up, I can open up an iPhone and throw a model of something right in front of me and learn more about it. So I think that we're about to see a revolution in learning that really is going to change humanity. So.
Next question.
I'm going to follow up with Bo Cordell's next question, which was, how did you get into this crazy production business to begin with?
I started writing, I learned how to write code on my grandfather's TRS 80. So I learned how to do BASIC on his, on what we tend to refer to as a trash 80. And so I learned to do that. And my cousin got an Apple II Plus, and I had to have one, and my father wouldn't get one. So I literally laid on the couch and cried for 3 days and wouldn't eat. And then he finally decided to buy one. And then that's all I did was just program. But all I did was program graphics. And so I was just like writing things. But back then it's like, turn this pixel on, turn that pixel on, and it was very, so I just wrote graphics and graphics and graphics and more graphics. And so, anyway, I was very into it. I learned how to do CAD. My uncle was an engineer. So I got a casual copy of VersaCAD and AutoCAD and learned how to do that, and then kind of went away. Went into radio. I walked into a radio station and said, I love alternative rock music, and I'll sweep the floors for free. That's how I got in, and ended up as music director and morning show host and production, assistant production director, and then same thing. It's just I just kept on getting into things by saying. I get into a lot of things by saying I'll work for free, and so I got into a Prime Sports Network as an intern, and then became regional, kind of the regional print ad design person for that, and then ended up at working in games and then in TV and then at Lucasfilm. So it was just one of those things that I just kept on following. I don't know if it's a straight path, but I also learned how to, when you say you're going to work for free or not very much, I learned a lot about cooking rice and living in basements. I did that for 3 or 4 years. So
next question.
Guy Cochran from Seattle asks, Frame.io was acquired for 1.2 billion US dollars. The CEO used to work for you. What was that experience like?
So he didn't really work for me. He freelanced a couple times with me, and he was on This Week in Media with me, Emery Wells. And so, and he was a guest host on MacBreak. In fact, the very first MacBreak video included Emery. And Emery was always, he was always way past us. Like, he's just so smart. Like, he was so smart and so particular and such a, and just focused, and so he's a great guy to work with. But in very particular, that's part of what made what has made Frame.io so good, is that he's particular about everything. And so you just knew that. I always trusted, as we started using Frame.io, that, it'll always be smooth and work well, because I know that it'll drive Emery crazy if anything is just a little off, and so I think he's been that way the whole time.
Okay. My question, you are speaking to the world. What do you want them to know?
I think that it is. What do I want them to know? I guess I would say that all you have is your soul. Like, that's it. Like, I know that's a Tracy Chapman song, but it's not the same. That's all you have. That's all you need, and that's all there is to work on. And the way you work on that is that you serve others and produce produce something good, something useful in the world, and you help other people. There's in Mahayana Buddhism, there is a it's called the big boat, because it says you can't get to nirvana without helping, without everybody getting there. You have to pull them all forward. And there's people in front of you that are that if they have big ideas but not enough time or not enough skill or whatever, and you help them with that. So behind you and you pull them forward, because they're going to help you do work in that. And then there's people around you. And the thing is in all of those areas, if you serve all those people around you, it makes everything else happen. Like, everything else will sort itself out. But the process of that is, everything is just a challenge for you to polish that, and to polish your soul and figure it out. And there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing that you need, and there's nothing else that's there. It's all there. A bigger game just gives you a chance to work on that more, And so I think that's what I would say. I know that's a little existential, but that's what I would say, that I think people get lost in all the other stuff.
Fantastic. Yeah. I can't help but lift up the global conversation when no one is left behind. It's a real thing, Alex. It's a real thing. And we're having it now. And I think in the very near future, a lot more people will be participating in that conversation. So I want to say thank you. So I know that we have a few more questions, but at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each panelist to just have a few words, and then Alex will have the final words, and then we will call it an evening. I want to again thank everyone so much for being here. So we're going to start with the elder statesman, Chris Clark.
Alex, your parents are very proud of you, and your children are very proud of you. End of comment.
Thank you. Todd Reynolds.
I resemble a lot of your remarks. I hang out with you because of what you feel about education and what you feel about a global conversation. And of course, where you've helped lead me and a lot of folks into greater technological connection. So that's some service, and I appreciate it.
Brian?
When I think about Alex, I think about passion. And that's the thread that's like gone through this whole entire conversation. And I've seen him, some of these stories I've heard, some of these ideas I've heard him say in different contexts. But at the end of the day, it's always about, having a passion for something and then actually showing up and doing it. I remember in the very, very early days of office hours, having a conversation with him on the phone, and he was already 5 years ahead, but he was also 1 year ahead, and he was 1 month ahead, and he was 1 day ahead, because he had a passion for where it could go and then a passion for how to get there. And that to me encapsulates all of what he's been talking about tonight. And that's kind of my takeaway, and my takeaway from working with Alex, and the way in which working with Alex has helped me grow and change and develop as a person. So that's my takeaway.
Thank you, Brian. Emily?
Well, I I think the first thing I have to say is that these hours fascinate me when we're talking to all the people we've met through office hours and getting deeper past what we can get to on office hours. But I don't know if this is really silly, but we need to fix your Wikipedia page and everybody else's. That we have to get some editors in there and add all this information, because there's just so much that I'm like, oh yeah, you did that too. Oh, that's really cool. And those connections could be made faster and easier if we had more of that. But I think that's where we're going. You know what I mean? And I appreciate, all of the people that I've met through office hours, and it's because of you, hosting it and being consistent with it. It didn't disappear when, the educator hour didn't disappear when people started heading back into the classroom, and rightfully so. I mean, we still need it, but it's just, it evolves and grows into things. And I think that that's the big takeaway for me, is that we can keep building the community and keep getting to know each other and make those connections so that we can have the big boat that moves forward. But anyway, thanks for tonight.
Ron?
Yeah, I think that something that attracted me to Alex really early on MacBreak Weekly and TWIT and things was always hearing these side things about what was going on about Africa or whatever. And the thing was that as we got into office hours, if it was just about Alex, it wouldn't have gone anywhere, it would have just fallen over. But the fact is that Alex has made this a movement, where it's the conversation, putting people's questions above anything else, and the curiosity that everyone has around everything is so key. But yet even that is not enough. What has been the thing that has changed it is helping people and seeing people actually come alongside each other, and the connections that have been made about doing things together. And so this show, things that just come about, and then people just all diving in and saying, how about we do this and see where it goes. And so ultimately I just feel like I knew early on, if I could just grab onto the tiger's tail, or to the coattails of Alex, I know it's going to a good place. And so thank you. And we're just super excited that it's not just about you, and that's what's so awesome about what you've created, is that it's about all these awesome people that are on this panel and all the amazing people in office hours. What an amazing journey, and is it will always be, I know, a highlight of my life to be able to talk about office hours.
Guy?
Wow, I don't know if I could top that. A highlight of your life, Grant. It's just one of those relationships that I watched in front of my face evolve. Your Blue came on, and now he's your business partner. So I just love this community, how things have evolved, and we've seen it over 500 episodes now. Tony's come from a little MacBook, maybe it was a 2012 or 2011, just came in looking a little rough, but now look at him. And I love that in one breakout lab we had the pie building, and it was no man left behind. And even though he had a few struggles, but Jonas and other people in the group pulled you up, and we all came out winners. You know, we did something together, and I think we touched on something. We found something that wasn't there. It was like there's dust all over the treasure, but we're slowly sifting it all away, and we definitely are moving faster. This morning I watched Tucker build 84 AWS instances. Well, he got to about 30 or 40, but that is a group that has now evolved because of these relationships, and he's doing things so much faster. I mean, 84 instances, that would take forever before, but because we're using CloudFormation and we have scripts, he could bang these things out in 22 minutes, so he's just batching them up, and it's all because of what's been built. So I'm so glad that you tweeted out that little link back in, was it, March or April, and I came in maybe the second day and just kind of watched behind the scenes and seeing where everybody's come from and hearing your stories, and just watching you let people have a platform to stand up on and grow. It's really been an amazing journey.
Tláloc.
I have a habit when I'm on the telephone to walk, because when I walk, my mind can move in a way that it can't when I'm just sitting there on the phone, and more ideas come out. What's interesting about the circumstances that you've set up for us, Alex, is that it feels like I'm walking. It feels like it because there's so many people who have different ideas, and it's in a mortar and pestle, and it's being ground up and ground up and ground up, and there's one common denominator, and that is never stop. Just keep walking. And that is something that I'm super grateful for. And that is, it happened to me in a number of my college years and my grad school years. And now I'm super excited that it's continuing, and I really appreciate it. The other side of it is, this is a space where there's a lot of broadcasters and there's a lot of corporate world, and I'm in the theater, and I didn't know if I could fit in, but I find it really interesting to learn a different way to look at things and to see it from a different side, and hopefully I can bring that as well. And so once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tláloc. And so I'm going to do another pause, because this is a learning lab as well. And so, Todd, let's try to get in a couple of more questions before Alex speaks.
Right on. Total left field. Here we go. How did the larger industrial light and magic workforce view the Rebel Mac unit? Were they set in their ways, or did they have an open mind? This is from our Douglas Carmichael.
There was a little edginess. I think it was, I think that there was some folks at ILM that thought that we were, I think some folks that thought that we were like the little kids, just playing, because we weren't using the big, we weren't rendering to OBQ, and we weren't doing all these other big things, and we weren't part of a huge pipeline. We were all like doing our little thing. There were some that I think thought we were doing something that was really groundbreaking and part of that. So I think it was just it was a wide mixture, but we were definitely troublemakers. I mean, I think that was all of us were getting in trouble a lot, so I mean, the rules weren't really something that we adhered to too closely as we went through that. So I think that it was a mixture of all those things. We didn't really fit into the rest of the pipeline.
Next question.
From Tláloc López-Watermann in Astoria, New York. What is your favorite thing about working in this field?
I mean, I got into it to visualize knowledge, so I think that when we're using this stuff and when we're building something, and we're building something that people can, I mean, the reason I went to ILM was mostly because I wanted to figure out how to do ILM level education material. Like that was, as we were going through forward, that I was like, we need to make it so that it's faster and you can learn quicker and you can do these things. And so when we're seeing something get put together that and you see people learning, I think that that's the thing that I'm the most excited about, or even seeing new technology come out that we're doing that can make a big impact on that. I get excited.
Next question.
Cyprian in Vancouver, Canada, says, you have recommended the BBC show Connections on office hours. What is it that you like about the way that this show presents historical facts?
I think that James Burke just struck a nerve of being able to tell a story that had you enraptured about, and just took you all over the world and all over, through centuries and millennia of back and forth, and how this all ties together, and created a cohesive learning experience that was impactful when I was a kid. And what I'm amazed by is that I can still look at it 40 years later, and I can just turn it on anytime and watch it. Like, it's so interesting, and I don't remember all of it all the time and anything else, but my kids love it. And this is, these are kids that watch YouTube and watch, all the other things, and they'll still take a 40-year-old video that is at half resolution, played back at 15 frames a second, which is what we have. And they love it. And they'll just sit there and just watch the whole thing, and so I think that he just masterfully, and anytime you see him speak, like I've seen some videos on Facebook where he talks through something like that, he's just so good at understanding the context of it and kind of encapsulating. And I think he does what Alton Brown does really well is, again, take the complex and make it simple. Like, how do I take a complex idea that you don't quite understand, and I'm going to make it something that you understand. And I think that, and when I was trading tweets at one point, and Alton Brown actually jumped in and said, well, I was watching a lot of Connections while I was designing Good Eats. so it's we all kind of source back to James Burke's work. And I just think that it's an amazing, he's just really, really incredible storyteller around knowledge.
Next question.
Frank Hilgers from Naperville, Illinois. Technology has expanded dramatically due to COVID. What technical leaps do you foresee as COVID persists?
We're going to get much better at how we interrelate and how we get stuff done online. We're still taking little baby steps of how this works. So whether it's online education or conferences or just talking to other people, those things were very, very, rough, and they're still rough, but we've been forced very painfully into the future, and a future that may not have existed because we were so stuck with, when things are working, you don't change them. You don't change it. Like the tracks are going, you just keep going. And when we were forced to change, we've been forced to rethink all those things, and people have been forced to rethink where they live, and they're forced to, suddenly a whole bunch of people, are questioning everything. And so I think that we're going to get much, much better about creating this global conversation that I've been, working on for 30 years. But this global conversation is now suddenly mushrooming because we suddenly have all this technology and billions and trillions of dollars flowing into the solution.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael. Could you see applying the Belfast method to other educational disciplines if the discipline itself can be easily distributed over a network?
Yeah, I think that I looked at everything through the lens of educational process. So like all the things that we're doing, whether it's building something that's local, if it's the Mobley process that's being used here, all those things intertwine and allow us. The idea is that you get the best people that are available anywhere in the world to be able to create the content, and we're not constrained by geography, and so the experts can be anywhere in the world, and the students can be anywhere in the world, and the people doing the production can be anywhere in the world, and that's going to be it's going to revolutionize everything, and we're just at the very beginning of making that work.
Next question.
And last question, Tony. From Douglas Carmichael, what stood out for you the first time you went to Africa?
I think that what stood out for me very, very quickly was just how almost hyperhuman Africans were when I got there. It's like I kind of feel like I'd always joke that while we were killing each other over grain before the winter, Africans were just spending time learning how to be human, like learning how to interact with each other and learning how to create community and learning how to. And there's so much that I learned, but there was just this. I remember there was within minutes after we arrived in Zimbabwe in 2000, there was a bus hit a car. And the car slid sideways, like literally right in front of the school. Like as we were driving up, this bus hit, and suddenly all these people showed up. Just came out of nowhere, and they pushed the car back over, and then they pulled the people out of the car. They were okay. Like everyone was okay. Like everyone was really worried, and they were all handling it, and they were pulling them out and making sure everyone's okay. Once everyone was okay, they all started laughing. They started talking. And they started singing. Like they were all singing. I don't know what they were singing in Shona. There was like this huge thing and they're dancing and singing and everything else. And this is like at 5:30 in the afternoon, in Harare. And it was just the most, I was like, whoa, these guys are way outside my, like they are like way beyond, like anything that I had imagined of that being. And that was like minutes after I arrived. And then that whole first 2 weeks that I was down there was, we went to Great Zimbabwe, and we came up out of Mashvingo, and we were going to Simon Mashoko, who's one of the, at the time before he passed, was one of the greatest Mbira players in Zimbabwe, and we were visiting him. He's in his 80s. We were visiting him, and we were driving up, and it was a Catholic church, I think it was Catholic, and they were singing hymns. But in Shona, with Mbira playing at full, like, if you've been to Southern Baptist, my wife's Southern Baptist, and so you've been there, and there's praise and worship and everything else. This was at a whole different level, like it was just, and I was like, okay, they're way, again, I just kept on going, I just kept on being struck by how way beyond anything that I had seen in my little life before, and was just so impressed and so struck by the power of, and I think that's what they talk about in Africa. When you get out of when you get past all the stuff that you see in the news, and you're out there, and you're with just the most amazing people, and they're just so present, and so and they speak from their, they speak from their chest, in a way that I always hope that I do. Every once in a while, I can feel it, but it is, there's just this incredible centeredness that occurs there that I think I'm continually struck by, and it constantly gets out of my, I'm constantly taken out of my comfort zone, in how connected, Africans are, and I say Africa is a big word, but in the countries that I've been in, and I see that consistently, through that, and I miss it when I'm not around it.
Powerful. Thank you, Alex, for that. And so I'm going to give you a few more minutes to share anything else that you want to share before I have my closing remarks and my thanks to all of the panelists.
I'm just always grateful, like, for all these incredible people that have shown up, through my life, and especially now through office hours, of just this incredible group of people. And what I love about it is that they are all coming from different backgrounds and all different skill sets and all different weaknesses and all different strengths and all different, and it's the mixture of all those things that make it work, that we're not a whole bunch of audio engineers that are both learning how to do something and convincing about the rest of the video engineers, or we're not all musicians, or we're not all, video people or animators or whatever, that we're this heterogeneous mix, this incredibly, this complex mix of people. And what ties us together what really ties us together is our curiosity, and that we're interested in our willingness to help each other. And so it's just such a pleasure, all the time. And I love the fact that this show got created out of, a member who just showed up and started working through this stuff and figuring it out. And then other people saying, I'm going to get it. I'm going to, come up under that and help make that work. And now we're building a show, and I think that, I think that we're just at the very beginning of all of that.
I want to say thank you very much for that tweet, Alex. It's made a difference in my life. And I'm just going to say thank you. No explanation, just thank you.
Well, thank you.
So I want to give special thanks to Kimberly Mobley, the Global Family and Friends, Alex, Lindsay, and office hour members, DVE Store, video360.com, approvedforloan.com, Tláloc, López-Watermann, Mr. Ken Jordan, Chirac Shishido, Jonas Natel, Marcus Folk, Richard Lavery, Chris Fenwick, Manolo Lorenzo, and Jeffrey Powers. I want to thank you all so much for contributing to Conversation with Tony Mobley. Thank you again. Please like, subscribe. Coming next week. Next week is going to be a new experience for all of us. So my guest next week is Louisa Jagger, Kevin Mumbo, and Lamar K. Chaston. And they are the founders of Greatest African-American Stories Never Told. And following them, we're going to have additional filmmakers, musicians, and even conversations around mental health. So again, I want to thank everyone so much for being here. Thank you, panel. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Alex. And we are going to leave Conversation with Tony Mobley, and we're going to go to After Hours at the conclusion. Thank you all so much, and good night.